Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the AI Best Business Show. Today with me I have Roman Biden. Did I say
Balin.
it
Yep.
right?
Close
Biden.
enough. Yeah.
Perfect. He's a founder of Duedilio. He writes a newsletter called the Business Inquirer, one of my favorite newsletters. Roman, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. Great to be here.
Uh, Roman, uh, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you have a newsletter. You started Duedilio, which is the due diligence company. Where did your entrepreneurship journey start on?
Yeah, I think I got it from my parents. My parents were always starting different businesses and had kind of side projects that they worked in. One of the first companies that I don't know if I can say I started, but maybe me, my dad started, was a publishing company. My dad wrote a book in early 90s and he self-published it, and he brought me on to help him kind of print the book, bind it. We created a company called Roman's Publishing Agency. I think it's probably still out there somewhere. Uh, so um, so I think that's probably where the interest in entrepreneurship started.
And how was the jump? How did you get into the SMB world, small, medium businesses world?
Yeah, so I kind of went full on into entrepreneurship around 2014, I think. Around 2014, I started a consulting company selling data to hedge funds. I ran that business, sold it, and that's kind of where I was introduced to the world of M&A. Um, just this idea of you don't you don't really have to start a business, you can buy a business, and there are a lot of businesses for sale, and that's really how I got started or got introduced to this world. Just like a kind of your drive or your idea for this podcast, I started the newsletter to
Right.
also kind of as a creative outlet to learn about the M&A space, SMB space, and yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Right. When did your first acquisition happen? Do you could you share anything about that? Like if you had a
Yeah,
first acquisition?
the first business I acquired, it was 2019 maybe or 2018. I don't remember
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
I only ran it for a couple of months and then actually sold it.
Oh, nice.
uh,
You kind of went through a whole M&A process. You bought it, run it
yeah,
for a while, and sold it, which is
yeah,
amazing. I mean,
yeah. So it was a quick.
that puts you in the weeds.
Yeah. So it's a relatively quick flip. It was an online service business, not tech enabled. It wasn't a tech company,
Right.
and I bought the business through Micro Acquire, and that's kind of how I started.
And now you're working on Duodilio. How did Duodilio start?
Yeah, so Duedilio, it's kind of a combination of my own personal pain point that I was trying to solve, and then also a bit of a crowdsourced idea. When I sold my consulting business, I had to assemble my deal team, right? You have to assemble attorneys,
Right.
due diligence folks, things like that. So through that process, it's not that it took a long time. It's just, or, or I should say, it's not that it was difficult, but it actually did take a long time.
Okay.
The whole process was just very convoluted, and I thought to myself that right now there's a marketplace for anything, right?
Mm.
Whatever you want to get done, you can go somewhere, submit a project, get proposals. But nothing like this really existed specifically for M&A. So the idea first came to me when I was going through my own kind of M&A process. Then when I started the newsletter, a couple of months in, I started getting inbound pings from subscribers asking me, "Hey, do you know someone that can help me do due diligence on this business, or review the tech stack of this business?" And I got enough of these kind of inbound pings where I thought, okay, like maybe there actually is demand for a marketplace like this. And that's how the idea was born.
And I love that you mentioned that, because one of the questions that popped in my mind while we were speaking is, there's a marketplace for anything, and we know marketplaces are hard because there's two part of the basket you have to get in. And when you answered the question that writing the newsletter got you one side of the demand, which is people need a solution for their pain point. Getting the other side of the demand could be fairly easy because you have people who are willing to pay for this service. So it's kind of, it'll be easy to find people who are willing to do the job to provide this service. Is that what you found out when you started it?
Yeah, I think in this type of marketplace for Duedilio, the demand side is the hardest. And once you have the demand, it's there's plenty of opportunities to bring on the supply.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's get into the weeds a little bit. And you spoke about selling your own business, going through the process, which was long. If you could tell whoever is listening in the SMB world that's willing to sell their business, how does the process look like of selling selling a business or buying a business? Let's go on the buying side. If I'm a buyer, I want to buy a business. What does the process look like? And the follow-up question would be, at what stage of this cycle would I go in and do my due diligence?
Yes, that's a great question. So from a buyer's perspective, I think there's a couple of distinct stages, right? So first there's the search, right? So you want to buy a business, you search for one. Then there's, I would call maybe pre-LOI due diligence.
Right.
You've identified a business that kind of maybe, fits some of your parameters. You're not sure yet if you want to submit an LOI, but you want to learn more. So that's kind of where the pre-LOI due diligence come in, and that's when you can start getting Duedilio involved. Once a business passes your pre-LOI due diligence, you can go to you submit the LOI, then you go to full due diligence. That usually takes 30 to 60 days. Then you kind of close the transaction. So there are these, 3 or 4 distinct stages. It's not the same for everyone, of course. It's sometimes it's fluid, but generally that's what I've seen.
And that depends on the size of the business too, right?
Well, yes, it depends on the size of the business. I think the stages are probably very similar. It doesn't matter if you're in the market for a $500,000 business or a $5 million business. You're still search, pre-LOI due diligence, closing. I think that's typically still the process. The due diligence just might look a little bit different. It might be a longer process, might be more expensive, might have unique quirks to it or specific areas. Yeah.
And you mentioned there's pre-LOI due diligence, and then a due diligence process after the LOI. What's the difference between the two? Like how are the process of each one different from each other?
Pre-LOI is a much less, I would say, intrusive process for the business seller. You're not asking for detailed financials. You're not asking the seller to disclose too much information yet. It's more of a high-level overview. And when you go into full due diligence, that's when you work closely with the seller to request the documents that you need. It might involve interviews with employees, it might involve interviews with customers. So it's just a much more enhanced process.
Okay, that makes sense. What different there are different businesses out there. There's tech businesses that are online, there's brick and mortar businesses. Does each of these have different type of due diligence that go in? And a general question could be, what different type of due diligence are there? And not speaking about like the stage during the process, but what different types of due diligence are out there?
Yeah, you're 100% correct. Due diligence really depends on the type of business you're buying. So for example, on our website, The service providers that are part of our network
Right.
offer over 20 different types of due diligence.
Okay.
I think the basic ones are the ones that everyone knows, which is finance, legal, technology, right? But then there's due diligence that's maybe a little bit more specialized. That includes something like background investigations, operations due diligence, real estate due diligence, logistics. If it's an e-commerce business, maybe it would be 3PL or shipping due diligence,
Right.
marketing due diligence, insurance benefits. So it really depends on the business. There's a very wide variety of due diligence that you can do.
Well, so what I'm understanding is for every business, there's a type of due diligence that could happen, and each service provider could be specialized in this type of due diligence.
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's maybe a couple of common areas, right? It
Okay.
doesn't matter what business there is, you're going to do your financial due diligence,
Right.
right? It doesn't matter what you're buying, you're going to request the tax returns, financial statements.
Right.
So that's required for any business. Um, Technology due diligence probably requires for a tech business, but if you're buying, I don't know, maybe a marketing company or
Right.
a home service business, maybe technology due
Okay.
diligence
Yeah.
isn't as important. Legal due diligence, usually also pretty required for a wide range of businesses. You want to make sure the business is not being sued. You want to make sure that there's the taxes have been paid. There's no outstanding issues
So
on the legal
basic,
side.
so basically understanding is we have basics, which is legal, financial, and then depending on each business, we go into more specific type of due diligence.
Right, exactly.
Uh, I know you probably get some data. Do you get any data from people who do due diligence and services like, and what I'm asking, what are some red flags that always come up in a due diligence process that the service provider tells the buyer, be careful, these are like known red flags in the
Yeah.
SMB world?
Yeah, I think so. I'll preface it by saying that Duedilio is a marketplace, so I
Right.
do not, I don't actually conduct the due
Okay.
diligence.
Right.
But having said that, I think a lot of the red flags have to do with expenses. It's very hard to fake revenue. It is very easy to either fake or how do you say it politely, mislead or maybe miss something on the expenses side.
Right.
You see a lot of business listings that say, well, I have no employees, but I do everything myself, the business owner. But then you find out, well, no, the wife is actually doing sales and marketing when
Right.
he doesn't consider her an employee.
Okay.
But
But he's paying
but
her. So it's
or maybe he's not paying
not
her,
paying
right?
her. Okay. But
So
so the buyer has to hire someone instead of her.
exactly, exactly. So I think it's those are things that are very common. It's really
Right.
the underestimating expenses.
Right.
And then of course, kind of one-off items in revenue, right? That
Okay.
are discovered in like a quality of earnings
Okay.
analysis. Yeah.
Right. That makes total sense. I've always heard the term, and that's a curiosity for me, quality of earnings, due diligence. Uh, could you help me or anyone that's listening understand what that term is, where did it come from, or when is it needed?
Yeah, so I think a quality of earnings report is typically requested for, I'd say, medium to larger transactions. I haven't seen it requested for deals that are under $1 million in transaction size. It's really when you get to 2, 3, 4, 5, $10 million transactions that clients will start to request a quality of earnings report.
Right.
Many reasons for this. One of them is because it is expensive. A quality of earnings, depending on components, can cost anywhere from eight to $50,000. I know that's a wide range, but that's really how much it may cost. And what a quality of earnings is, it's actually exactly what the name is. Well, how good are the earnings, right? Because if, let's say you have a business, year one they make 50 million, year two they lose money, year three they lose money, year four they make money. So you see the pattern is very choppy. The earnings are choppy. Well, why is that? So quality of earnings would kind of dig into that and figure out, well, why is there such variability? A lot of times, a quality of earnings will also uncover one-off items, right? So, for example, we recently had, maybe still have a COVID, right? A period of COVID that impacted many businesses. That hopefully is a one-time kind of abnormal situation. So that will, of course, have some impact on business financials. Well, how much of an impact? You need to figure that out, and that's what a quality of earnings will do.
Okay, so it's kind of an emphasis over the over any due diligence that really decides, oh, why is this chop in earnings? Why are we going in? And just figure out what's happening.
That's one of the things. Figure out what's
Okay.
happening and what's the normalized earnings. If you remove the one-off things, for example, in small businesses, a lot of business owners run personal expenses to their business. I'm not going to talk about the legality of it, but it's a very common thing, right? Now you have to adjust for that, right? And that's where the quality of earnings involves, making those adjustments.
Moving on from that, who's your typical customer on due diligence? Is it on due diligence? Sorry, is it search funders? Is it one-time buyers? Is it new buyers? Is it big private equity firms? Who's your typical customer?
So right now, the typical customer is probably a search funder or independent sponsor. That's typically what we see, but we also have clients who are family offices, small private equity groups, corporates that are doing strategic acquisitions. So we have a pretty wide range of clients, but if I was going to say what's the majority of clients, it's really searchers, search funds. Yeah.
Okay. And what sizes of businesses are being followed to have due diligence on? Like, what's the range? 500K to 50 million? Like, what size of business are you seeing more often being on the?
Yeah, most of the business we're seeing are between $1 and $10 million in transaction size.
Okay.
That's typically what we're seeing. The kind of the sandbox we play in is lower middle market, and everyone has a different definition of what that is. For us, it's really any transaction that's 1 to 30 million. That's kind of where we're able to help.
Okay, that makes sense. What typical amounts do search funders spend doing due diligence? Like, and I'm asking this because let's say I'm coming in new to buy a business, what should I budget for? Because a business would cost 200,000, 200, 500,000. What should I budget for to do my due diligence?
Yeah, there is no right or wrong answer here.
Okay.
It really depends on, it's like insurance. How much of insurance do you want to buy? Because you can spend more than the purchase price of the business on due diligence if you want to, right?
Right.
Now, do you need to? No. Typically, I think for financial due diligence, which I think is required for any type of business, you can spend anywhere from depending on the business size, anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 for some basic due diligence, just to make sure the numbers add up and there's no red flags. Of course, if you need the quality of earnings report, then that's going to be more expensive.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's no right or wrong answer. It's really what type of business are you buying? what type of due diligence you think you need, and how much you want to spend on it.
Okay, so like it's interesting you mentioned that it's really an insurance for you to feel safe
Yep,
buying this business, and you could pay your insurance price could be higher than your business price if you really want to be
exactly.
100% sure. And
Right.
what I always say is you going in and buying a business has some risks in it, and you have to be okay with taking these risks because this is part of how the business world is in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's no perfect transaction. There's always
Exactly.
some risk.
Finally, I get to speak about my favorite newsletter. Uh, what you mentioned your purpose for starting at the beginning is that you were curious, you wanted to, it was a way for you to look into more deals.
Mhm.
Uh, how did a little question here, how did you start growing your audience? Did you have in mind that you wanted to grow your audience, or were you just sending it out for your own fun purpose at the beginning?
Yeah, at first, I mean, and I think it still is. It's on my own kind of creative outlet, if you will. I never thought that it would grow or anyone would really be interested in
Right.
it. I started by I'm in a community called Trends. It's an online community. It's by
Okay.
The Hustle, which is an
Right.
online magazine. Um, I started just posting the idea there that says, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. If you're interested in subscribing, here's a link. Put your email in there." That's how the kind of the idea for the newsletter was born. I think I got maybe I mean, close to 100 subscribers. I think that way.
Okay.
So when I launched, I think the first issue had close to 100 subscribers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And how many subscribers are you at right now?
I think around 1,700. So it's still
Okay.
relatively
Yeah.
small.
Well, how do you find deals for the newsletter? Are you subscribed to like different platforms or like different websites that shop deal, or like, or do you
Yeah.
like what's your way around it?
Yeah. It is somewhat of a manual process.
Okay.
So I am subscribed to certain platforms. I have relationships with certain brokerages and online marketplaces. So I find a lot of deals through that. Um, at this point, I do have some deals that come to me just from readers. They share something they've seen, or some maybe a business they're selling or a friend of theirs is selling. Yeah.
And what I like about the newsletter is after each listing, you have the idea of like, what I like and what I don't like or what scares me about this business. What's your kind of category? Like if you're looking, what makes a deal the perfect deal for you, or like what breaks or makes a deal for you? What's your golden criteria?
Yeah. For the newsletter, I write about all types of businesses. So
Okay.
I don't really think of it from the lens of, well, what would I be interested in buying? I think at first when they launched the newsletter, I did a little bit more of that. I was more focused on, okay, well, what would I be interested in? And then I kind of moved away from that, and I wanted to see a wider variety of businesses.
Right.
So, for me personally, I love businesses that are uh, more of kind of the lifestyle business, a low workload,
Okay.
have good margins, can be scaled, asset light, growth opportunities. Those are the type of businesses that I like.
Right.
But obviously, I talk a lot about SMB. Uh, my criteria probably excludes any Main Street business, personally. Um, so, yeah, I think my personal criteria is a little bit different than what I write about.
So maybe in a like in a more specific question, like when you're deciding, okay, what I like about this and what makes you like a business, is it the margins? Is it how long it's been in business? Uh, what are like four criteria? Like if I'm a buyer and I want to get, what are 4 or 5 criteria I should be looking at to decide if this is a business I should go and buy?
Yeah, so I do like businesses to have some operating history. 3 to 5 years is great. I like businesses that have steady margins. I like businesses that are in a growing market. I think that's a big one because you want the pie, the TAM, to be expanding.
Right.
Yeah, I think those are the couple of like these 3 or 4 criteria that I look for.
Okay. And do you have any like business? First, have you ever has ever been a business that sold because of the newsletter?
I think there've been like 4 or 5 businesses that
Oh,
have sold.
nice.
Yeah, that people
Okay.
have reached out, and then I connected them with either the broker or whoever was selling the business. Yeah,
And
maybe even more.
I like this because I'm a person that likes to be a connector. I think
Yeah,
this I've tried to figure out my passion for the longest time, but recently
right,
I'm coming to this settlement that I like to be the connector. I like to meet a lot of people and
right,
connect them together. And I think you sending out the newsletter and knowing that businesses have been sold because of the newsletter gives you a
yeah,
certain satisfaction more than
for
just
sure.
the amount of people
Yeah,
reading it.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Are there any specific businesses that you've listed that you're like, these were outstanding, they were different? And one I remember is the uh, what was it? It was an online marketplace for people who wanted to read their future. I forgot the term
Oh,
behind
yes,
it.
psychic
Yeah,
readers. Yes, yes,
yes.
yes.
This was
That was
one
an
of my
interesting one.
yes, it was really interesting. I actually tried to inquire about it, but it was sold by the time I went and I
Okay.
inquired about it.
Yeah.
So it was really. Is there anything similar to this that you remember that still stands out to you?
Huh. Um, I don't know. Hmm. I don't remember if I've written about this, but I think I have. There was one business that helps people obtain citizenship in tax-friendly countries.
Okay.
I think that was an interesting one. Um, and then I don't think I wrote about it, but there was like an airplane repo business,
Oh,
airplane
nice. Okay.
repossession business that I saw. Um, yeah, I have to think of a couple more. Yeah, but those are kind of the ones that
It's,
come to mind.
since you're in the market right now, you write a newsletter, you have Duedilio does due diligence in the SMB world. From what you're seeing in the market, what are industries or SMBs in what industries that are like growing right now, or they're hot right now? Like what type of SMBs are hot right now?
Yeah, just based on what I've seen, we have a lot of requests for home services businesses,
Like
land
HVAC,
and
plumbing.
landscaping,
Okay.
HVAC, remodeling, things like that. Yeah, window cleaning, washing, things of that nature. Um, we get a decent amount of requests for healthcare services, so
Okay.
things like pain clinics, um, like daycare centers, adult daycare centers,
Right.
things like that. We're seeing some demand. Um, yeah, manufacturing. I think manufacturing is another one. We tend to see a lot of requests for.
Any specific type of manufacturing or just in general as an industry?
General, yeah, like sheet metal, machine
Okay.
manufacturing. We had one request for footwear
Mhm.
manufacturer.
Okay. And and
Yeah,
and I'm asking because I think manufacturing is one of the industries I'm really interested in,
yeah,
because I think COVID proved to us that we can't depend on other countries to
sure.
manufacture for us. And we have to start growing our manufacture capabilities. I mean, not just the US, I think every country around the world has to start growing their manufacture capabilities, because you never know when another pandemic happens and the supply
Sure.
chain just starts chopping off. And
Yeah,
manufacturing is really and it gives you satisfaction when you manufacture something and you see it in stores or in hands of
yeah,
customers.
right.
What industries are still under the radar, in your opinion, just from understanding to market? You think people
Um,
haven't looked there yet?
I don't know. I have to think about that. I don't see a lot of franchises.
Right.
Because I think franchises are interesting businesses. I think a lot of people maybe have like negative, I
An
think of
idea about them.
McDonald's, negative
Right.
idea about them, but I think there are niches within franchises that are very interesting.
Okay.
I have some friends that own some unique franchises that do really well. So I
Right.
haven't seen too much talk about that. Um, we haven't gotten too many requests for like media brands.
Okay.
So online
Mhm.
magazines, things like that. We
Do you
haven't
think it's
received.
hard? Do you think it's because it's harder to run or people aren't familiar with them? Like, what do you think is the reason for media brands?
Um, yeah, I think it requires a unique skill
Mm.
set. I think
Okay.
it's very hard for like a first-time business buyer
Right.
to run that type of business. I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Roman, I really like our episode. I've gone through all the questions I had in mind, and you've shared a tremendous amount of knowledge, especially on the due diligence part. I think anyone who's going to listen to this episode, and you search funder that's going out to look for a business, if they're going to listen to this episode and they're going to understand what types of due diligence they want, what are the process to go through a due diligence in the
Yeah.
process of buying a business. And anyone who's looking to buy a business, please read the Business Inquirer newsletter.
Thank
And
you.
not to mention that you send another version of it on every Friday that
Yeah.
has whatever interesting stuff you read on Twitter
Yeah.
or magazines or articles. And this is super interesting too. So thank you for this episode. Any plugins you want to put if anyone wants to follow you? Should they go on LinkedIn, Twitter? What?
Yeah, all of the above. I'm easy to find. Twitter, Roman SB1. My email, hey@duedilio.com. That works. I'm on LinkedIn, so easy to find me.
Roman, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Fun.